I love experiencing stories that deal with very minor and interesting subjects, but by the time I'm done with them, my perception of those topics is completely shifted. I look and think about them in a very new manner, and whenever I get to read something like that again, I always go for it. Enter Goodbye Eri, a one-shot by Tatsuki Fujimoto, and this one deals with the concept of memories and how important they are not only to create but also to cherish them. Fujimoto has also written Look Back and Chainsaw Man, so before even getting into it, I knew this would be at least a little weird and quirky, cause that's just Fujimoto's natural style. And while it was very weird, it was also so much more than that. The story is about Yuta, who got his first smartphone as a gift on his 12th birthday, and immediately his liking went towards the camera feature. He loved to just record his life and random stuff. But the wholesome nature of the story is broken as we get to know his mom has a severe illness which most probably will kill her, and she wants him to record every part of her last days, so even if she's gone, Yuta can remember her through the videos. Then a time lapse of their lives starts playing as we see them having fun and cherishing her final moments. Yuta feels so weird because he knows his mom can die at any moment, but also he's filming every part of it, and right now they're just happy and fine. Nothing's wrong. It's like the weather is all sunny and great, but you notice a dark cloud looming around. That is why he's still unable to wrap his head around this entire situation. But he can't ignore it forever, because the day is here. His mom is dying and she wants him to film her death. But as you would expect, this was a little too much for a 12-year-old kid. So Yuta decides not to go to the hospital and run away. This is all normal and in the sphere of expectations. Obviously, he can't do such a thing. But then he not only runs away from the hospital, but also blows it up. What the actual hell? And this was also the exact reaction everyone had in the theater. Yes, everything we read so far was a movie or a documentary actually, because this is real. Yuta is a real person, and he edited down the hundreds of hours of footage he had of his mother and made it a movie to screen in his school's fest. And everyone hated it. They called it crappy, bad, and just horrible. Even his dad hated it. For obvious reasons, he made a mockery of his mom's death. And the explosion at the end was the biggest flaw. Why did he choose to create that? That's just disgusting. But it starts making sense when it's later revealed what exactly Yuta cut out of his movie. Yuta's mom was not the good-hearted person she was portrayed in the movie. She was abusive and didn't treat her son well at all. She didn't make Yuta record all this for him to remember her, but because if she somehow beat this illness, she could make a documentary focusing on how she overcame this illness. We see deleted footage of her beating Yuta for not recording properly or doing a bad job. He's just 12, by the way. He went through all this for a hypothetical successful film focusing on his mom. And the most fucked up thing is she didn't let go of this greed till the very end. As her last words when Yuta didn't come to record her death were that boy was useless to the very end. All this extra context makes us think about Yuta's film again. It was not enjoying his time with his mom, but a stressful and depressing time. The explosion at the end also makes sense now. While the movie made it seem like he loved his mom to death, behind the camera, he didn't like her. The explosion was a sign of his hatred towards his mom, that he didn't even respect her death, because she simply didn't deserve that. But this entire scenario can be looked at in a very different way, and you'll probably hear this again in the video because this manga does this a lot. It leaves a lot of stuff on your interpretation. Rather than accepting reality, Yuta ran away from it. Let me explain. With the explosion, he clearly added a fantasy element to his movie, because it's easier to ignore something if it doesn't seem real. So instead of showing his mom's last breath and accepting the reality of his life, he chose to change his reality through this movie. He removed the way she really treated him and chose only to put in the good and happy parts, because that's how Yuta wants to remember his mother. And at the end, he didn't accept her death by making the entire movie a fantasy story. This shows that while his film was a flop, it wasn't too bad, and that he had a passion for making movies, but needed the right guidance and training. But all this hate really gets to Yuta. Seeing his creation, which he spent a lot of time on, getting picked apart and mocked by everyone, broke his heart. So he decides to commit suicide. But then on the terrace, he meets a strange girl named Eri. She takes him to an abandoned building to just watch movies. A lot of movies. It turns out Eri loved his movie. She loved the idea and raw emotions it portrayed. But it was an immature and inexperienced work. And looking back at it, you kinda realize that. Many times the camera angles were weird. It randomly cuts to anything. Mom is making a cake, a stray cat. Mom is dressed up for a date night. Mom is in the hospital for test. There was no flow in the movie. When you first read this, it seems like the classic weird Fujimoto style, but knowing this was a movie made by Yuta with no prior experience, it just makes sense. Of course, everything looks chopped down and disoriented. But now Eri will guide and train Yuta to make his perfect film that will make everyone bawl their eyes out. The entire second part focuses on just Eri and Yuta as they're watching movies and throwing ideas at each other, trying to find a plot for Yuta's redemption movie. They even pick up on each other's little habits, like Eri makes a peace sign whenever characters bag a win, and Yuta yells "oh yeah" every time there's titties on the screen. Finally, Yuta comes up with a plot, and it's pretty much the same as his last movie. The protagonist makes a film on his mom's death, and people shit on it, so he decides to jump from a terrace, but then a vampire girl takes him to a building and trains him to make a redemption movie. It's all the same, but Eri is a vampire, which makes sense as Yuta likes adding a bit of fantasy to everything. But his plot continues. The protagonist's problem isn't the fact that his film got made fun of, maybe it's that he didn't record his mother's death, and he regrets running away. The vampire doesn't have long to live. She's lived for 1,000 years, but she's about to die from an illness, and despite living for so long, she's afraid of being forgotten. So she wants the protagonist to shoot a movie on her last days. And if you couldn't see it coming from a mile away, this also eventually becomes a reality. Eri is suffering from a disease that will soon kill her, and she wants Yuta to record her death, giving Yuta another chance to make a movie about the death of someone he cares about. But this time he has a chance to not run away, but actually do it. He not only grabs this chance, but absolutely aces it. They spend and record every moment of her final days together. They travel, eat and have fun all together on the camera. But the time is here, Eri is about to die and Yuta has to be with her recording everything, which absolutely does happen. Yuta records Eri's last breath and screens it on the big screen, making a movie that made them all bawl their eyes out. At the end of his second movie, the theater is filled with a wave of emotions. Everyone is crying and sobbing as Yuta hits a peace sign in memory of Eri, cause he just bagged a big win. Having filmed to death the thing he couldn't do for his mother, Yuta regains the will to live and the confidence to make movies. We get 4 entire pages of black panels showing us the movie is over and the credits are rolling. This entire manga was a movie all along. But this ending is a little too cliche for Fujimoto. Yes, the manga continues even after the movie ends. We get a time skip of Yuta in his middle ages, and he's still recutting the raw footage he had of Eri. He thinks something is missing from the movie, and his hunch is that he will find the missing part in the 2000 hours of footage he has. And we couldn't skip to a worse time in his life. He's still holding on to the movie and editing it, but also he just lost his entire family in an accident. This puts him in a very bad mental state, and he decides to end it all in a place that holds memories for him. The place being the abandoned building where Eri and he spent countless hours together. And Eri is still there. Cause of course she is. The plot of her being a vampire is also real. Apparently she dies every 200 years and comes back to life with all her previous memories being erased. And the last Eri leaves a message for her with instructions on how the new one should live. But this time she also had Yuta's second movie with her. So she exactly knows what kind of a person the last her was. And now she will live in a cycle. Every 200 years she'll come back and remember Yuta again. She tells Yuta that the missing part in his movie is a bit of fantasy that he likes to add in his stories. Cause Eri being a vampire is a reality now. It's not fantasy anymore. They say their goodbyes with Yuta finding the missing part of his movie and also a proper closure on Eri. As Yuta starts to leave, he blows up the abandoned building, adding the pinch of fantasy his movie was missing. Now what the hell does this even mean? The explosion is just classic Yuta. The single explosion ties everything in the manga together. As it is revealed, everything we read was a movie. From the first page to the last, it was all a movie. We never saw anything outside of the camera. And Fujimoto chose to hint or portray this in a very creative way. If you look at the panel layout for this manga, it is pretty much just the page being cut out in 4 rectangles. Almost every page follows this layout, and there are also pages where there is a very subtle change in between every panel. They are pretty much the same. Then add this with the occasional motion blur we get here and there, makes this entire manga feel like a camera recording. These are all features of a recording. That's so genius. But talking about the actual ending, it can be interpreted in many ways. And that's the beauty of this manga. Was Eri really a vampire, or was it all staged for Yuta's film? Is Yuta actually this old, or was this Eri's idea for the ending of this movie and they used Yuta's dad to act as him in the end? Really, you can interpret the story and the ending in countless ways, which makes it feel even more like a movie. After finishing a movie, oftentimes you are kinda left on your own. It's like the author gives you the story and now you can see it in whatever way you like. And here's how I like to interpret Goodbye Eri. If you think about it, Yuta's life sucked ass. He has been a victim of abuse and people around him hated him. But what saved him were memories. The memories he went on to make with Eri and the memories he already had of his family and how he chose to remember them. In his first film, Yuta cut out every negative aspect of his mom and even her death, because that's how he wanted to remember his mother. The way you choose to interpret your life experiences and the way you go about dealing with them is what's important. You either hold on to the bad ones or, like Yuta, completely run away from them and only remember the good times. This message becomes clear when, after the screening of his second movie, one of Eri's close friends thanked Yuta for portraying Eri in such a positive light, when in reality, Eri was kind of a bitch, to her at least. But now after this movie, she'll always remember Eri as a good friend. Eri too was living in a constant cycle of despair. Imagine just living and dying every 200 years. And what saved her were the memories she had with Yuta and getting to remember them again, rather than just forgetting everything like the past Eris. Essentially, it's Fujimoto telling us to go live our lives and make more memories. Go outside, make friends and have fun, because all these experiences can save you in the future. And the explosion is Fujimoto waking you up to reality. In the end, this is just fiction. Yuta had this problem of, quote, I have this bad habit of viewing the problems right in front of me from an outside perspective. I could only face the facts in front of a camera. This is basically a metaphorical way of telling how we, the audience, tend to fix our problems through some external sources, be it movies, YouTube videos, just doom scrolling, or a manga like this one. Fujimoto takes a very cutthroat approach. Yes, I have given this good message through the story, but it's meaningless if you go on to consume more media and drown away your life. How the actual manga ends, whether Eri is a vampire or this is real, this is fake, doesn't fucking matter. What matters is for you to now go and do something about your life, make more memories with people around you, and simply have fun. The one thing I love the most about Goodbye Eri is how Tatsuki Fujimoto goes 100% in displaying the morale of a story by beautifully displaying the power of just enjoying life.